Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of 6 for 6 Season 4 now finally. We finally crossed over to another glorious season of 6 for 6. I know Season 3 was a little bit longer, spread across over 2 years, ladies and gentlemen, but now we are progressed on to Season 4. I think it's now due time, but like I said earlier in other podcast episodes, we're going to bring on guests to get their picks. It's almost like college game day where we have guest pickers to see how well they do. The last time we had a guest picker was Isaiah, and his record was 2-4. But I think John can do a lot better. I think John can get 4-2 in this pick, if not maybe 5-1. But we'll see, or he will go the distance and get the glorious 6 for 6, 6 correct picks and no wrong. That's what we like to see on the show, but it's very difficult because once one breaks, it's like losing in a parlay. You just don't turn around. But John, how you doing tonight? And first time on the show, long time listener.
I think it's funny. You must have had a Warriors fan last time because your last episode record was 3-1. But now I'm good, man. Was happy to be here, and I never thought we would hit the day where both of our teams are going to match up together because we hadn't faced off like Ohio State in about 20 years. So it's going to be interesting, and happy to be here. And obviously, if I do worse than Isaiah, then I'm quitting my podcast. Like I'll just quit it immediately. There's no way I could have a worse record than him.
I mean, I think some of the games that we have, I think you're going to get a lot of like a solid record out there. I've had weeks where I've gone one correct pick and everything just flat out tanked, but I never lost 0-6 in my picks. So I think you're going to be okay. You're at least going to get one. We can guarantee you that, but you never know. Anything is possible with these 6 picks, but some, I would say, go in favor of others, compare, but we'll have to see. But we got to remind the viewers our, record. Last episode, our only loss was because we chose Georgia over Notre Dame. That was because the backup quarterback just couldn't get the job done. Easy said than done. Besides that, everything else was beautifully perfect. But our season 3 record, ladies and gentlemen, was 72-50-3. Beautiful record. I don't think you can ask for much more of getting correct picks here and there on top of that. And then our 2024 record was 46-31-1. Beautiful all the way across the board for our 2024 record. But hopefully 2025, we can get off to a great start and just keep those wins growing and keep those losses to a minimum. But without further ado, John, we're going to bring in our 6th pick of 6 for 6. We got the Vikings-Ram wild card weekend. Monday, January 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN, ABC, and on ESPN+. Such a mouthful for all what we got on a Monday Night Football. But if we look at this, John, giving you some background on it, the Vikings away record is 6-2. Now, if you look at their losses, in that aspect, playing in Detroit, that was their only loss, and they got embarrassed in that one. Besides that, they have games where they're taking care of business, but they're playing it close. So what are you going to get out of this Vikings team that's going to be, convincing that they're going to win wild card weekend, but get the job done, or will they fall short compared to the Rams? I don't like the Rams homestand because they're 5-4, and I'm just not convinced. If it was like 6-2, I would be slight edge to the home team. But with the Vikings, how they've been doing, and then the Rams just, 4 out of their last 5 games, they lost to Seattle by 5 points, but, the Vikings beat Seattle by 3 points. So very close in the span of like 2 weeks when each team played that Seattle. But we got to look at it, John. Who do you think is going to be your, best case winner getting out of wild card weekend between the Vikings and the Rams?
The Rams, and this is what we talked about before the show. The Rams know what it's like to lose and to fight to get back. If I remember before, early on in the season, they are 2-6, right? And I think at that point, usually when teams are 2-6, it's usually your quarterback's out, or you're 2-6 and you are screwed and you're going to miss the playoffs. Not only that, they win a division, and the perfect scenario for them, the Cardinals, the Isaiah's Niners, Seattle completely, it just crumbles. And I think what we talked about with the Vikings is they all their wins, even back when Kirk Cousins and that team had that great comeback win against Buffalo, but we were on that call, and it was about close games. And I think when we go from high school to getting as a college, we form habits, something that's new and different, even if it's scary. And Minnesota has to have this new habit of getting a lead and keeping it and not being able to have this close game. You need to be able to start off red hot. And if your stride as a team is just keeping it so close, meaning you're coming from behind a lot. And if you're in the playoffs here, you have a new quarterback who has never started a single playoff game in his career. So he's in a new environment, first year as a starter for the 17-18 week season against a team who has been to the Super Bowl, against a team that has had a lot of young players that have developed into great stars. I think Sam Darnold and the Vikings are going to come to pressure, and Sam Darnold is going to have a lot of, he's going to get paid, but I think the Vikings aren't going to win this game just because with their ability to not being able to get to a lead and dominate really is going to be their downfall, because if all your wins are close games, it means you're coming from behind, and you can't start from behind in the playoffs, especially against an experienced team like the Rams.
I do give you props with that, John. But if you look at the Rams' last 5 games, they played the Cardinals, beat them 13-9. Solid defensive battle right there. But then you look at the Jets, 19-9. Again, holding teams to field goals in this scenario. But that was back-to-back weeks. Then you look at San Francisco, 12-6. Again, not really too much with this Rams offense of just driving down the field, which is going to be very critical in the postseason run. And then they stepped it up when they play Buffalo, when it's 44-42 to beat Buffalo. So, like, they can score when they want to, but besides that, they have just been in the teens in production. When you look at the Vikings on average out of the last, 5 games minus, the Detroit Lions loss, they're averaging about probably in the lines of around like 27-30
Mm-hmm.
on average points per game in the last, last 5 games. So with that, they can also drop 40 because they dropped, 42 on the Falcons in that nice revenge game against Kirk Cousins. That's why I'm leaning more towards the Vikings. They can get that offense going, but at the same time, the Rams defense has just been putting teams at bay. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where it's like, does the Rams defense bend don't break mentality actually break? And that's when the Vikings will find a way to muster out an ugly victory. It may not be flashy, it might be like 16-19, and that's the final score. Like, it's not going to be a high scoring game. I think it's definitely going to be a low scoring game, but I don't think if the Rams keep playing with like low scoring, I don't think it's going to be in their favor. Where it's like they might be trailing by a few points because there might be only kicking field goals.
The reason why I picked the Rams, like you just said, their defense is going to be the reason why they win those games. Those division points towards the end of the year, you're holding them to 12 points or less, which is great. But to me, the lack of experience of Darnold is going to be key. Like I've said, his first ever playoff game as a starting quarterback. That game against Detroit was going to be key to see how Sam Darnold could handle that pressure in the playoffs. His full time as a starter for the first time in a couple of years, obviously formerly being in Carolina, playing in San Francisco last year. But your offensive line wasn't able to protect your asset. And even when Sam Darnold had time getting out of the pocket, he wasn't able to make those throws here. Justin Jefferson wasn't dominant in the game. Jordan Addison wasn't dominant in that game. And when you look at their season, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson were one of the best receiving duos in the entire National Football League. But with lack of experience from your veteran quarterback, with having your test against Detroit completely struggling. Mind you, Detroit lost most of their defensive starters this year and still had to get the job done. I just think lack of experience from Darnold, the Rams defense is going to be able to dominate. And if Minnesota can't get that run game early going on, then you're screwed because you're going to have to relieve some pressure. Sam Darnold is in a new environment. He's never started a playoff game. And usually, young quarterbacks in their first playoff game, it usually doesn't go the way they want, unless you're a magical guy like a Brady or someone else. But those are, again, diamonds in the rough in rare cases.
Yeah, I would say in the most recent quarterback class, CJ Stroud did it against Joe Flacco last year. Like I'm in the same boat as you. Quarterback going in first time in the playoffs, they're not going to do so hot. Like that happened when Josh Allen went into the playoffs for the first time. Like seeing him go into overtime against Deshaun Watson, it was like, what is this man doing? It was a fiasco watching that happen. Even though he fell short, but it was like he got the experience, and then now he was like, besides Patrick Mahomes and all that stuff, he's been pretty much solid going into the playoffs for Josh Allen. But I know we don't have him on the picks for this week, but because they're playing against Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. I'm sorry about your Cincinnati Bengals. They should be in this scenario, but a little bit too late in that
I
scenario.
don't think it should be, but that's another conversation for another day.
Oh, for sure. But we can round this off. John's pick, he got the Rams. I got the Vikings in this scenario. You can catch this game Monday night, January 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN, ABC, and on ESPN Plus. Next up in the fifth slot, I think you'll like this game, John. You got the Commanders and Buccaneers. This is game I would say is more of a coin flip than anything else because it's just how close those teams are. I do like the Commanders as the underdog in this scenario, but granted, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles, the number two seed in the NFC, and they beat them. They are hot right now. I think they got hot at the right time, and I think they have enough of a momentum to get this wild card victory over Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay. Granted that Baker Mayfield does have the playoff experience, but at the same time, I'm liking that Eagles victory. I think this team can do something special and get out of wild card weekend with a victory. But I'll let you take a look at it. Their away record for the Commanders 5-3. Buccaneers record is 5-4. Very even match between home and away stands. But I'll let you put your hot take on it.
You know what? I agree with you. And this reminds me of the Texans last year, where you have an organization that was dysfunctional with previous head coach, first year head coach and failed in Atlanta. I believe was there when they blew that gigantic lead, 28-3. Kyle Shanahan, Isaiah's the conference coordinator. Point is, this team to me, like we talk about diamonds, we talk about rare cases, Trevor. The Commanders is a rare case, and probably the rarest case I've seen in the NFL in a long time. Literally, new ownership. They got bought last year, right? 2024, 2023.
Around that time. You don't
2024, right around that time. And so less than a year and a half ago. And you bring in a young quarterback from LSU, I believe won the Heisman.
Yep.
You're bringing a head coach who failed in his last stint, who revitalized the Cowboys defense. And we've talked about sometimes defensive coordinators don't work out as head coaches. In this case, it is. And I'm not sure because he didn't strike me as that fiery passion guy like Dan Campbell. But they've been surprising and they found ways to win. Chicago was 4-2 when they faced up against. To me, this is the case. Big reason why I have the Commanders win this game by over 8 points is I trust the Bucks, but I think, like you said, the Commanders are hot. They get a great veteran receiver. They can run the football when they need to. They find ways to win, even if it isn't pretty. Against Chicago, perfect. Hail Mary. He found, even though they lost against Dallas on a missed extra point, found ways to win. This team reminds me of the RG3 Commanders, but better. And I have the Commanders winning this game. I'm going to give a score prediction. They're always wrong, so forgive me, folks. I would say a 25-20 Commanders win in the midway through the fourth quarter as Jane Daniels finds a way on third down to hit Terry McLaurin.
Well, I do like that pick. Like I'm trying to look at, the teams that they played against, but at the same time, week 18 to me means nothing and it's diddly squat because it's just the stars are not playing. So I'm like looking at the score, I'm like saying that's not starters playing because they're already got a playoff spot or they're fighting for a spot to secure and they may play them for half the game and that's it. So I can't say like, oh, the Cowboys, win for the Commanders looks good because Dallas is not in the race. So they're not going to waste their starters. So then it's like, oh, I could use the Saints, but then the Buccaneers played the Saints in Week 18, and I would say backups are playing for the Saints at that point. So it's hard to really make that eye test where it's like these teams played teams that were actually competing with starters versus backups. But this is why it's wild card week and anything's possible. Anything wacky or wild could happen in this game. And that's why I like the beautiful of this coin flip. Even though the Commanders' winning percentage is like almost a 42% chance of victory. That's like them having the underdog. I think it's just the experience is why it's probably give them like slide it that way. But I want to give, Daniel, I think he's got something going.
I would say one last point to say that the reason why I picked the Commanders, not just the hot hand underdog mentality. Tampa Bay, when they beat Philly in the playoffs last year, that was the most ugliest playoff win I've seen in a long time. And that's that same roster that's here a year later in 2025. And to me, Jaden Daniels is more mobile. You have a great veteran receiver. You have a defense. I just think this team's going to be a lot better. They have a better defensive-minded head coach, and I think it's really going to be proven in this game.
Yep. Well, everyone, you can catch this, Commanders Buccaneers game Sunday, January 12th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on NBC and on Peacock. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we go into our fourth slot where you can only catch it on Amazon Prime. Steelers Ravens, Saturday, January 11th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. John, the Steelers. Another winning season. But they have been out of the last 5 games on a terrible losing streak. They lose to the Eagles. They already lost to the Ravens already in the regular season, 34-17, and that abysmal of a beatdown. They lose to the Chiefs, and then they lose to the Bengals at the end of the year. I don't know what else you need from that. But then when you look at the Ravens in the last 5 games, the only loss in those last 5 games was to the Eagles. Everyone else, they won. They shut down the Houston Texans, only gave up a safety. In reality, that should have just been a goose egg. But, they were being calm and courtesy and giving Christmas gifts with 2 points. That's it. They had to give something up, and that's what they did in that scenario. Now they took care of the Steelers, so it's like a nice rematch. You're going to look at the film and, improve upon it. Lamar Jackson is having another MVP type season, so I think that sort of rolls over, but he's been struggling in the postseason. I think he can get this job done, but at the same time, his track record in the postseason is hurting him. But I'm going to give the Ravens the chance to take care of business here. I want to hear what you got on this.
I'm not saying I'm agreeing just like a politician would do, but the reason why I say I was about to say Pittsburgh, Baltimore is the Steelers have been garbage in the playoffs. I'll quickly go through this because I'm not going to go do like a huge rant like I usually do on my show. But I talked about this on my podcast, and they're 0-4 in the playoffs since then. Since then, you've lost against Blake Bortles. People say if you're born past 2010, who? You lose against the Browns at home in the wild card round against Baker Mayfield, against a team that also paid a quarterback who hasn't started a full season. So you struggled in the playoffs in the past 5 years. You're what? 1-4. You have no quarterback. Thank you, Russell Wilson, for at least getting us to a winning record. Thank you. If that game doesn't show Pittsburgh is going to lose this weekend, look at what the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow got sacked more times than I have whatever. I mean, my gosh, that team is ASS for the Steelers, and I just don't trust them. And one last thing, why I picked it, Lamar Jackson's ability. Yes, I agree. He in big moments in the playoffs he struggled, but against a team who has 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And I think with their mobility, with Derrick Henry, he's going to be the reason why they win this game. And I just think the Steelers have a lot going on this offseason. Reject Najee Harris's 5th-year option. You don't know who your quarterback is going to be. Also, think about this. George Pickens literally dropped the ball at every single moment of that game against Cincinnati. And if he's your number 1 receiver and he can't catch the football, then how are you going to have an option when Russell Wilson hasn't been accurate the last couple of games and he can barely run the football? Can't run the football, receiver can't catch. you're screwed. Baltimore wins by over 5 points.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, John. But then again, they have Justin Fields in the wing just in case if they want to switch it up. But I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough to get the job
He's
done.
never started a playoff game. Same thing like Sam Darnold. I think if he was more accurate, he would have been the guy the entire year because he can extend drives. While Russell Wilson, as the broadcaster sit in the game against Cincinnati, because I was watching the game the next morning, and he can't extend drives like he used to. You just show he's mobile, but it's like stiff. Like when you're in the cold, your knees are stiff. You can't move as quick. That's Russell Wilson in 2025. He's just not as mobile. And I think what they need to do if they want a chance is something that Texas will have to do against your team and what Texas has done in a few moments during the season. Use Justin Fields on 3-1, 2nd-and-inches, 4th-and-2. Because if your quarterback can't run the football, and if you need to convert a short 3rd down, bring in Justin Fields to run the football. If not, Najee Harris isn't on the field, and you have a better chance. But it doesn't matter. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are a fraud. They should be arrested for to be a pro football head coach. Currently, Ravens are winning. Sorry, I just trust Baltimore and Derrick Henry versus a quarterback or a team who hasn't been great in the playoffs since Blockbuster was the company. Just saying. Look at the numbers. Just saying. Okay, I'm done.
All right, me and John both have the Ravens winning it. You can catch Steelers Ravens Saturday, January 11th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on Amazon Prime. Now, in our third slot, ladies and gentlemen, we got the Chargers against the Texans. Saturday, January 11th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:30 p.m. Pacific Time on CBS and on Paramount Plus? Question mark? Yes, it's on Paramount Plus, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first time in a while that all these streaming platforms are really diving into the NFL playoffs. In my opinion, this is terrible because I'm used to, going to a nice local bar, watching some playoff games on a Saturday. But now it's like they have to go to a streaming site to be able to do it. So kudos to our bars to try to stay in business and, not bend over backwards to the local streams, but they got to do what they got to do to service us as a fan base in the NFL. But John, my Chargers, I didn't think they would be here in wild card weekend. I thought they were going to be on, the down end, only 6 to 7 wins. And they're like saying we're turning around, we're rebuilding. But now you're in the playoffs. Now you're giving the fan base an expectation to be like, hey, next year you should be back at the playoffs. I tell, everyone else, they got more of one of the weaker schedules that lucked up in their favor. Granted, how you want to take it. But at the same time, their defense has been doing good. Their running attack is great, but now your running backs are all injured. They signed Ezekiel Elliott to the practice squad, so I don't know what that actually means now.
Whoa. When did this happen?
That it happened yesterday. I sent a screenshot to Steve like saying it happened. And it was from NFL on Facebook. I saw it, and then ESPN dropped it as well. I'm like, it's the law of the land. So now we have an Ohio State backfield with J.K. Dobbins and Ezekiel Elliott. Who would have thought this would happen? You would think in other Madden games this would be like heaven on earth. But now you got people who are injury riddled or not what their former prime was. So, well, Harbaugh knows what he's doing, I guess. So I'm not really going to question the man's genius behind his defense prowess, but he loves running this ball, so he's going to keep building his running back core. But I like the Chargers in this one. C.J. Stroud's been a little bit shaky, but the Texans have tried to find different ways to win, but they're just not explosive like they once were last year. That's what I'm feeling on this one. But the Chargers' away record is 6-3 compared to the Texans' home record of 5-3. Again, one game difference here and there. Not too upset about it. But the Chargers, it's their defense. That's what's really keeping them in a lot of these games. And I think it's a common theme in the NFL playoffs. It's these defenses that are going to shut these teams down. But if you have an offense that can get clicking and make key drives when they matter the most, then you got a different story. I think the name of the game of this playoffs is, can I keep that explosive offense off the field long enough to give my offense a chance to win this game down late in this game? So give me the Chargers on this one.
I think this is weird. I can't believe I'm about to say this. And I'm picking the Chargers. For a few things, I'll go over it very quickly though. The Texans traded for Stephon Diggs. He's been out for a year. Your other main receiver, Tank Dell, to me could have been a very talented star who is not only out for this year but for next season. And I'm afraid at that point his career is done. So now one of your main receiver trios is done. Can Mechie and Collins get the job done? And Harbaugh, who I'll admit, I thought the Chargers were going to go 4-12, 4-13, 5-12. He hasn't been in the NFL in over 10 years, but winning at the highest level in college football and bringing back who hadn't been in a while is a perfect selection. I gotta give him credit. Yes, it's the running game probably won't be that much of a factor, but I just think that's so fun. Ezekiel Elliott going to the Chargers. I always wondered, but we'll talk about the off program. But I picked the Chargers. I just think Herbert has a lot to prove, not to the media, because who cares what we generally think? It's about the organization and in the locker room. But I think he needs to prove to himself that he can get this job done. And is Cannon Allen's playing this weekend, right? Not Ken, what's his name? What's the receiver? They have a receiver, the rookie. He's really really good.
I knew you were talking about.
I think that's going to be a Puka Nakua type effect, but for the Chargers and wanting to have them winning by over 12 points. I just think Houston at the end of the year has been as undisciplined as a toddler trying to go to bed because you can't pass, you can't throw, you can't protect. Your offensive line is as undisciplined as anything. And when you can't afford crucial offensive line penalties, you're done. I get the Chargers here in this game. I can't believe I'm picking the Chargers in the playoff game. I'm like, are we in the Twilight Zone or something? But I gotta give your team credit. They got it done, and I think they'll get a win this weekend.
I think the more I look at the AFC outside of the Steelers, it's becoming the AFC of old where we had these veteran quarterbacks that normally reach the playoffs each and every year that just cemented their legacy. Like, Phillip Rivers, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. Like, you have teams that are always there. And we're starting to get to that point where we're seeing the Chiefs like this. The Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen. Like, that's your dynamic Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady scenario a little bit. But then you have CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and company. They're not too far behind. Couple pieces here and there. They're basically Super Bowl contending teams in the next few years, depending how things line up for them. So it's just like slowly grooming and developing. But then you also have the Denver Broncos with Bo Nix. Got fired. They got into the playoffs. But now they have no weapons. So them getting to this point is a nice indicator where it's like a few more pieces. Now this team is deadly in the AFC. So it's just one of those things that will take time as things shake out. But we're getting to that point where we're going to see the same teams each and every year until a massive trade happens or things break down in those, respective teams.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great game. I think, and Chargers want to continue on. They'll have to get that number one. Actually, I think they would just need like a number two receiver. I think the rookie receiver, I can't remember his name, but I'll look it up later. He's gonna be their guy. Like Puka Nakua should have been. Cooper Cup got out. But the question is really, can CJ Stroud put the team on his back and make the weapons around him better, just like Daniel Jones did? Which I know sounds funny now because he's now active on the roster for the Vikings. Is what Daniel Jones did 2 years ago against the Vikings. But it should be interesting. I just think Stroud is a great player, but they're really going to have to figure out who's going to be the number one receiver. Diggs is getting older, ACL tear. We'll just have to see. But I think there's more questions for the Texans offensive line because you got Penny Sewell from Oregon, great offensive lineman for the Chargers. I think it's really going to. No, it's is it him or is that Detroit? I just had the biggest brain fart of my career. But I would say just okay. I'm sorry, folks. It's been oh my god, I'm really bad right now. But I trust the offensive line better for the Chargers just because the penalties of that one offensive lineman in Houston, I just don't trust him.
Yep. So me and John both got the Chargers winning in this one. Chargers Texans Saturday, January 11th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:30 p.m. Pacific Time on CBS and on Paramount Plus. Now, John, we have gotten to the college football semifinal playoff games. We got to go to our number 2 before we get to our number 1. I know it takes some time. It's a heartache. And I know you want to talk about your mighty Texas Longhorns, but we got to talk about the other game. Notre Dame, Penn State, the Orange Bowl, Thursday, January 9th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. We're looking at the last college football playoff games. Notre Dame takes care of Indiana 27-17. Then they beat Georgia 23-10. Now you look at Penn State. Who did they play? They played SMU, bushwhacked them 38-10. Then they played Boise State 31-14. My common argument with Penn State is their offense is just not good. They're just there and they move the ball when they have to and they throw it to their tight end, number 44. That's all they do. It's one-dimensional. It can be beaten. But it's their defense is just keeps shutting teams down and giving that offense a short field, and that offense can score when they have short field. But when they have to do a game-winning drive, I haven't seen that really all year. Maybe against USC. But again, their defense is bend, don't break. I think this is a common theme for tonight. It's the defense. But I think Notre Dame is more well-rounded compared to Penn State because they made those fine tune-ups. And be able to score on Georgia. Yes, granted, Georgia's offense was wounded without their quarterback, but their defense was still there, and that's still a top 10 defense within the country. And Notre Dame was able to get 13. Yes, not 20, not 13, but 23. But they got a kickoff return touchdown in that game. Let's not forget about that. So let's subtract that 7 off the board. But at the same time, it's like Notre Dame can stall, which is going to be problematic if they start stalling against Penn State because Penn State will love a short field. But I'm giving the edge to Notre Dame. I think they're going to find a way to muster it out because I like their offense more than Penn State. I will never stop preaching it for Penn State this season. Their offense is not good. And my friends are like saying, well, look, they scored, 30 points against Oregon. Oregon's defense is not good. We all have seen that what Ohio State did to them. And they almost lost to Boise early on. Let's not forget that close victory that they had with Boise. Granted, yes, Boise had a phenomenal year and they fell short. Like, I give Boise all their props. But at the same time now, Penn State's offense is just not there, John. I don't know what else I have to say. It's just not there. So give me Notre Dame to win.
I agree. And you said something I've said about Tennessee when they had Derrick Henry is like you said, one-dimensional. And it's funny because I'll give Notre Dame credit. People say, Carson Beck wasn't in the game. Okay, well, look what Gunnar Stockton did to my Texas Longhorns. Look at what he did. He handled his stuff in the first half. And mind you, Notre Dame's quarterback had 90 passing yards. 90, not 900 in the rookie mode, Isaiah. 90 passing yards against Georgia. Their defense is so physical. And I think the biggest thing why I don't have Penn State, it would be close, but like you said, was it I can't remember their tight end name for it. Drew Alar is the quarterback. But point is, like I said, they're one-dimensional. If you're going to win a big game in the college football playoffs, 12-team playoff scenario or not, you have to have more than one guy that can start. It's not just guys that can play, guys that can start. Like you said, all they have is their tight end. Mind you, I believe he is a senior. So after this game, when they lose, what are they going to have? Who are they going to get in recruiting? Clearly, they haven't recruited that well because if all they have is their tight end, you're going to get destroyed against a Notre Dame defense that did that against Georgia. Georgia was held to 3 points, I believe, in the first half. You can say Carson Beck wasn't there. Look what he did against Texas when Carson Beck went. I give him full flowers. I think he'll be great at Georgia next year. Look at what he did. So don't discredit, not you, sorry, but look at what Notre Dame's defense did. It's going to be a defensive battle. I think they're going to force Drew Alar to at least have a turnover in the second and in the fourth quarter. I think Penn State is going to fold. and I have Notre Dame winning this game by at least over 5 points. I just think Notre Dame's defense is really good. Even though their offense wasn't great against Georgia, sometimes you have those games in the playoffs where it wasn't pretty, and then you can bounce back. Because I think they'll be able to bounce back against a team, specifically Penn State. Because, like you said, if they're one-dimensional, they can figure that out early, get double coverage against them, and then what are you going to force Drew Allard to run in the pocket and throw it downfield to who? So I got Notre Dame in this game.
Yeah, Penn State does have a decent running back core, but at the same time, they really don't air it out as much as you think they should. It's just they don't have that receiving core that I like it. But also, James Franklin in big time games, that is also coming out as well. You could argue, well, he played a top ranked opponent against Boise and all that stuff and SMU. I'm like, yeah, great. But are we talking playoff caliber teams? Or are we talking the expansion teams that we got now? Like, you got to beat the teams are in the top 6 to maybe top 8 each and every year. And has James Franklin really done that? Not really. Sure, granted, he beat Ohio State, in 2016, but he hasn't beat them since. He's beat Michigan here and there, but again, not very consistent. It's just like this Penn State team didn't take care of business. They come in, playing Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, lose. Wasn't that your big game? James Franklin, what are you going to do to convince people, or at least your fan base at Penn State, saying that I'm your coach and I can get you, a national championship game or a Big Ten title game? You haven't got them a Big Ten title game. We're almost getting close to 10 years now since your 2016 appearance in that game, like literally 10 years. Yes, you granted Ohio State had a juggernaut team. Completely fine. But then also Michigan came up and rise and won a national championship. And where was Penn State in the mix? So I'm like, come on, Penn State, where you got to go on this?
That's what I want to add to another point, and I would love to do a college football thing with you in the future. But Penn State, when you like you said, they lack firepower. You have one guy. And when you look at any of these other teams or teams that had previously won it, they had depth. Bama, Georgia. Look what their tight end is doing in the league. He's not getting enough looks, even though he's with the Raiders. He's a phenomenal player. Look at Clemson when they had Deshaun Watson. So many of these teams, what did they have? They had depth. And like you said, Penn State doesn't have depth on offense. If all you have is just a tight end, then you're going to be screwed. Because now you're going to be a predictable red zone offense. Because now it's either going to be give it to your tight end, Drew Fuller, or something like that is his name. Or what are you going to do? Let Drew Allard run it in? Like, it's just so one-dimensional, and you don't have the firepower. You're done. Like, you're done, buddy. You're not that guy. And you're right. And it's been a long time for James Franklin, and they haven't won anything. I can't believe I'm picking Notre Dame. I've never liked Notre Dame, but I do like their head coach, and clearly the guys like to play for him. And when you have much more depth and you're more physical, think about it. Oregon has never been a physical team, so whatever, Penn State, they're not physical. And a game that is such depth with the 12-team playoffs, you got to be physical. That's why I got Notre Dame. I think Penn State doesn't have a chance to win this game.
Yep. So you can catch Notre Dame, Penn State, Orange Bowl Thursday night, January 9th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. Me and John both have Notre Dame to win it. We can finally get to our game, John. The game that we've been waiting for, itching for the longest time. Texas, Ohio State, the Cotton Bowl down in Dallas. Friday night. Like, you can't get better than that. Get off of work. Find your local bar, drink responsibly, get home, make sure you have a designated driver, everyone. We want you to be safe out there. You can catch this game January 10th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. John, I know you went to go get something. As John comes back, I know before I ramble on how to set up the magnitude for this game, he's probably getting his Texas jersey, so we'll see what he got.
You can keep going.
Keep going? All righty. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we're looking at the matchup between Ohio State and Texas, we'll start with Ohio State as John gets ready. Ohio State dismantled the teams that have played against in the playoffs. Very consistently of getting 42, almost 40 points a game, 40, 41 and a half points a game right now. We're looking at Tennessee 42-17. They beat Oregon 41-21 in the Rose Bowl. Like, you just see this Ohio State team just keep going through. Look at John Hook'em Horns right there, and a very pride Texas he is. But then we look at Texas taking care of Clemson 38-24. You got Arizona State, where they had a meltdown in the second half. Let Arizona State get very passionate and send them to 2 overtimes, and squeaking that off with a pick at the end of that game, which was a fantastic game to watch if you had a chance to watch it. But again, Texas and Ohio State, both teams have offensive firepowers when they get clicking. Ohio State's defense can make key turnovers. Same with Texas. But Texas's offense makes mental mistakes and they blunder. Ohio State, if they get caught in their own head and say we're going to try to be smash mouth Big Ten football and try to run the ball at you like they try to do against the team up north, aka Michigan, and they didn't do anything with it. So you have two teams playing with some pride in their hands. Texas at home. I don't think you can get bigger than this, John, when you're in your home state and you're in Jerry's World at AT&T Stadium in the Cotton Bowl. I don't know what else Texas needs is to wake up and to play a physical game against Ohio State when Ohio State can turn on a dime and come right back in the game with quick, speedy receivers and a strong running back core. But I'll let you go from here. I already know your pick is Texas, so I'll let you give your your stance on this.
Sure. Sure. Okay. I'm gonna go on a little bit of rant and forgive me, but 15 years it has been since Texas has been to a national championship game. For 12 years, we played like ASS. We have played like trash. This game to me is defining for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. Say what you want about other games. Was that game too close for comfort? Yes. Has viewers made me nervous? Yes. But like we talked about games that may not be pretty, the viewers made the throws we need to. And I remember looking at that game, Trevor, Arizona State. I got home, I watched the highlights, and I haven't been that nervous since my first ever sports game 19 years ago, the 06 Rose Bowl. Obviously, I'm picking Texas. Like, this is my team. And until they win it, I'm not washing this jersey. So this is just it's one of those sports superstitions. I don't care what people say. I think it's going to be a good game. The biggest thing for this team is obviously Ewers returns faces off again against Ohio State. Hasn't been there in about 3.5 years. But it's going to be great. You're going to have to run the football really well. And obviously, I love my team, but I can also understand set aside bias in terms of we have not been a great third quarter team. And like you said about getting like Ohio State getting their own head, I think Steve Sarkisian getting in his own head. When we run the football, we're really, really hard to stop. When you go out see against Clemson, and I think it was Clemson or Arizona State, where it was Clemson, over 235 rushing yards. Jadon Blue had a touchdown in that game that made the game pretty much out of reach. This defense is physical, and why I'm glad we get to play your Ohio State. Because memory serves me correctly, the last time we played was the 2005 college football season. So it's been nearly 20 years. Both defenses are physical. And like I've said about this Pittsburgh, but this has been true about Texas, in those short down moments, second and third down, use Arch Manning as much as you can. Yes, Ewers, I believe, is healthy enough. He's been able to run the ball, especially last week against Arizona State. In those moments, he made throws when it matters. Use Arch Manning on second and third and short. Run the football. I think if you're Blue and Wisner, both of them both need to have minimum 40 to 50 rushing yards by halftime if you want this third quarter to be different. Ewers has to limit his turnovers. Yes, I know Ewers is guaranteed at least one turnover a game, even going back to Michigan. But if he can limit his turnovers to at least the fourth quarter, then I think this game, Texas has a great chance against your Ohio State Buckeyes, because third quarter is when we tend to shoot themselves in the foot. We start off hot, then we realize we don't run the football when we get collapsed in the third quarter. So run the football, use Arch Manning on second, third, and short. Defense, at least first as Will Howard to at least 2 turnovers in the first or second half, plus forcing him to go to your star receiver early on in this game and making those quick 3 or 4 3 and outs by the end of the first half is also going to be key. Texas is going to win this game. I'm surprised you thought I was going to pick Texas, man. Are you sure? I mean, anything else could have happened in the entire multiverse. I thought I lost it. I thought this jersey was in the car. I'm going to have to go run to the car and come back. But this team is great. And I will say one last thing to Longhorns fans is I think some of us have forgotten what it was like before Ewers. There has been games where it hasn't been pretty. He hasn't played great. Made the throws when he need to. Folks, David Ash, Taiwan Stoops, Charlie Strong, Tom Herman. If you remember that Tom Herman rant, Isaiah filled out 2 Walmart applications by the time I finished my rant. So Longhorns fans, regardless what happens this weekend, regardless of what happens, how Ewers plays, we are not where we used to be, partly because of Ewers and Steve Sarkisian and being able to recruit. I remember Steven a few years ago, we've had calls over the years, right, where we compare Texas to Penn State or some other teams. Fair. We played like ASS. We couldn't recruit or anything. I know I'm going on a rant, but frankly, at this point, I'm just one game away from the national championship, bro. This time last year was travesty for the Texas Longhorns, losing against Washington Huskies, and then they absolutely collapse, and he goes to Bama. I'm just excited to play all. It's been such a long time, and I can't wait to see how this happens. And again, like I said, I never thought both of our teams, Trevor, were going to face off against each other. What I would love is if we win, if we face off against Penn State, brother, Penn State might as well just stay home. They got no shot. Can't wait for this game. It's going to be great. I will have to watch it the next morning because it's on a work night. Thank you for y'all for scheduling the game so late. But it's going to be great. I can't wait. Ewers at least have minimum 130 passing yards by halftime.
The main things I want to look at between Ohio State, there's a few takes. If you look at the playoff games that Ohio State plays in, they jump out to an early lead, like they put the pedal to the metal and score literally like 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, and it's like, well, the other team didn't even score a field goal yet. It's just been that efficient for this Ohio State team. Like, I think when they lost to Michigan, we've seen these Ohio State teams come out balls to the wall and just gun it. So when you look at the previous Rose Bowls that Ohio State was in, like they just started flooring teams and dropping like 55 points. And those weren't even with their true starters, minus like the Missouri year where they didn't, like literally everyone left the team and everyone like saying the season was a complete utter disaster and losing to Missouri. But besides that, this Ohio State team has like a weird mission where it's like we have a shot to actually win the whole thing. Like, so it sucks that we lost to our rival for 4 straight years in a row, but now you have a chance to win a national championship. Sure, people are going to hang over your heads losing to your rival for the 4th straight year, but you can still crown yourself as a national champion. So the community will have to take that as that is.
What's so interesting, as what you just said, Texas and Ohio State has had fairly similar story seasons. You lose against a huge rival in a big game. You lose again in a moment when you probably shouldn't have, but it actually benefited you. Texas loses against Georgia in the SEC championship game. Y'all lose against Michigan, but you have a home playoff game. That's an advantage to you. Both teams on offense start really hot, and sometimes they may get in their own way. And if Texas is going to play against y'all, because they're very similar, what you just said, which is why it makes this game so interesting, is if Texas is going to win, like I said, keep that early lead. And this is the thing too. Texas, when they keep early leads and they have a situation where it's like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 3, they pass the ball when they should be running the football because you maintain time of possession and being up 2 or 3 scores and using Arch Manning on 2nd and 3rd down. Utilize him like you did against A&M. I'm not saying every single other play is going to have a touchdown, but against A&M on that 3rd or 4th down play, his first play of the game at the goal line, touchdown Texas. And if you're going to have a chance against that, you're going to have to maintain time of possession, like just like Ohio State. Don't get in your own head. Maintain those leads, but also running the football. And like you say the same thing about Texas, say the same thing about Ohio State. That's why I think this game's going to be interesting, man. And frankly, I can't wait to see what happens.
I think if you look at Ohio State when they end up losing to Michigan, Michigan's goal was to keep Ohio State's offense off the field, basically. And that's what they ended up doing. So Texas will probably have to take that playbook and kind of elongate their drives to make sure that Ohio State can't do rapid fire scores. Because you don't want this to turn into that weird
Game.
LSU A&M game where it went into like 7 overtimes and they had to make new overtime rules because of it. This game could be something like that where it comes down to 2-point conversions and it's just like, yeah, we're just going to dink and dime our way for the 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th OT, and it just comes down to a mental mistake. But also on top of mental mistakes, that's what this game is really going to help decide a winner is who makes the least amount of mental mistakes in this game. Penalties will cost you. And we saw in the Arizona State game for your Longhorns, John, they were making costly penalties. If you do that to this Ohio State team, Texas will pay for those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. I think if, like I said, Texas can't have those. And it's not just offensive penalties; it's the full start offensive line penalties. And I think if you're Texas, we talk about your was it Michael Smith? What's his name? They were star receiver for Ohio State.
Jeremiah Smith.
Jeremiah Smith. Sorry, I don't want to keep saying Jeremiah. Sorry, Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith. Sorry, folks. You have to have that firepower. I think Isaiah Bond is going to have to get involved more in this game because even when they said they would have keep him reserved for like the SEC championship game, he doesn't seem to get a lot of targets. I think getting Bond early, which is great, but unlike Penn State, if they don't get him involved, you have Gunnar Helm. Unfortunately, he is a senior. Thanks a lot. I can't be a redshirt. You also have Wingo. You also have number 11 who had the punt return for a touchdown against Arizona State. One last thing, though. I know people keep talking about stolen comments about that targeting call. It was targeting. But here's the thing. Like in every game, when he said, even if it's not pretty when you win, you also got to look at both sides. And Texas got the win. And I'm more pumped from this game than anything else. And I can't wait to see what happens. I'm curious to see what is going to happen for both sides. Or Ohio State is able to get to their receiver early on. Can we run the football with Weiser and Blue working on his fumbling issues? I mean, Weiser is a freak. Blue can get that speed against when we played against Clemson in the first round, man. He had that 77-yard touchdown. The speed and the physicality of both defenses, to me, why this could potentially be the best college football playoff game we've had. And it's really going to be exciting for both sides.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, John. The more you look at this day, you're only 3 days away between a classic, high noon showdown, even though it's a night game. But, if this was on, regular season, it would be on big noon kickoff. We know that for sure. But to look on the bright side, John, in the next 2 seasons, Ohio State and Texas will play each other. So you got a nice little streak going on. So whatever happens to this game uses, the momentum for next season. So depending how it finishes, you got a nice little trilogy that we're going to get going. And then after that, I think in 2026, it comes to Texas. So the 2025 season is in Columbus. Then after that, it's in Austin, unless the SEC says this goes to a neutral site, which I would flat out hate. I'd rather be in Austin and get to experience that and go down to Texas and hang out with you.
Bro, it's about
to go to that game in person.
4.5 years. Oh.
We'll make sure we get some nice vegan barbecue for you.
Hey, I'm serious, y'all. We had a bet of, was it the Vikings? Some bet, I think, of, I can't remember what it was. But if UT wins it all, which I believe they will, but I will have to eat vegan barbecue. I've said it in the group chat, and I'll say it right here. I think it's going to be great because imagine next year you have, and I already got the problem is I made a mistake, Trevor. When viewers went down and Arch Manning came in, I already ordered my Arch Manning jersey. Here's the problem. By the time that jersey came in, yours came back. And I talk about football superstitions, not washing his jersey until we win the Natty. I haven't put on the Arch Manning jersey because he hasn't started at all a single game since yours came back. It's a sport. So now it's going to be sitting there for almost a year, and I haven't even wore it. Do you know how much money that costs? Do you know how much, I don't know if it's one of those special editions, and I have to wait, and it's just sitting there. Man, I can't wait, man. I can't wait for this playoff game. It's going to be good. And this is a career defining moment for both quarterbacks. People have to say a lot about Ewers, Will Howard, what happened, or how they played last week. Can they keep that momentum? I think anyone, regardless of what happens in this game, I think there are some people that anyone that thinks that Ohio State is going to blow out or do against Texas what they did against Oregon, it's just not true. What Ohio State did really phenomenally well against Oregon is taking advantage of the misfortunes of Oregon. And I think that goes for either side. And it's going to be a good game. I can't wait. And I know this looks bad because by the time this was a few years ago when I bought this. So come down. I know it says Big 12, but it was my first ever sports jersey. But it's going to be a good game. I can't wait. And we'll just see what happens. And you know what? If Texas wins or even Ohio State does win, I would love to come back on the show because if Texas does win, that would be the longest sports reign I will ever have. 15 years, 19 years. I was 8 years old, my first ever sports game, not knowing what the heck football was, much less how to spell it. So let's get it, Texas. It's been a long time coming.
All right, Texas, Ohio State, the Cotton Bowl showdown in Dallas, Texas. Can't get more of a big classic showdown than that. Friday, January 10th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. I got Ohio State. John has Texas. Best game of the week you can ever imagine for, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give you a quick recap of our picks, and then we'll send you on out of here with our final thoughts. So, with our sixth slot, ladies and gentlemen, I got the Vikings. John has the Rams to win these respective matchups. You can catch this game Monday, January 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN, ABC, and on ESPN+. Next up, we got the Commanders, Buccaneers. John and I both have the Commanders winning it. You can catch this game Sunday, January 12th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on NBC and on Peacock. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we got Steelers, Ravens. Me and John both have the Ravens ended up winning it. Saturday, January 11th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on Amazon Prime. Next up, we got the Chargers, Texans. Me and John both pick the Chargers to win it. Saturday, January 11th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:30 p.m. Pacific Time on CBS and on Paramount Plus. Next up, we got Notre Dame, Penn State, Orange Bowl Thursday, January 9th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN, and we have Notre Dame winning this game. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, game of the week, Ohio State, Texas, Cotton Bowl, Friday, January 10th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. John got Texas. I got Ohio State. You can't get much better than this. John, without further ado, we've made it to the end of the program. Season 4 of No BS, not No BS, on 6 for 6 has done it.
That's okay.
Oh, man. You know when an hour show sets in, you start messing up show titles. But, John, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. What are your final thoughts for tonight's program?
No, it's been a good one. And I will say, regardless of what happens this weekend for Minnesota, congrats to Sam Darnold for totally changing your career and your kids' lives and their kids' lives because career defining you for you. So congrats. But for Texas, this is a big moment. And if you can win here, go to the Natty. I think, in my genuine opinion, whoever wins this game, Ohio State or Texas, is going to win the Natty. That's just what I think at this point. Texas is going to be good. But, y'all, Steve, I'm not too far from downtown. And what I mean is we're going to have a conversation. Don't get in your head on don't get in your head on third down. Run the football. Don't play like AWS in the third quarter. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be exciting. Thank you for having me on, and I can't wait to do more college football stuff in the future. Hopefully my picks are better than another person we do know. We won't say Isaiah Leong's name, but definitely here or there. Let's get this win. Can't wait to see what happens this weekend, and hopefully we can get to the national championship for the first time since I was in 6th grade.
All right, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy all the games this weekend and coming up during the week. And have safe travels if you go to those games in person. You know, make sure you're also, if you're having fun time at your local bars, Please be responsible. Have your designated drivers. Stay hydrated out there as you go through it and know your limits. Take care, everyone, and we'll catch you next time here on 6 for 6. So long for now. Bye-bye.
Fucking horns, baby.